Hello, lunatics. Welcome to another episode of the Blue Ribbon Podcast. I'm coming to you down here from Duncan, South Carolina. We've got Phil in the house. We got Blake in the house. We all have been having an amazing meeting of the mind, and we're going to tell you all about it. This episode is going to be focused on platform. We've got some ideas and some plans we're thinking about putting into place, and so we're going to use this opportunity to kind of hash that out because we had always historically kind of been a van only fleet, and then Phil corrupted the entire operation, and now we're heavy on flatbed, and we're maybe thinking of just going the whole way. So here we are, you guys. To me, this is funny historically because when I met Larry and I mentioned something about platform, absolutely not. No way. That's the deadhead's too high. Had all these reasons. No truck that I ever run will work in platform. And then I guess in 21 maybe I think we got a Conestoga.
Yep.
And it just takes one thing and it just derails the whole operation. So now, we've got two Conestogas, two 53-foot flats, a 48-foot flat. And we're looking at maybe just going all the way, maybe, and we'll maybe let's start it here because I mentioned this earlier of what about if not only the program is there to teach business, what if it's come to us and for 18 months we'll teach you business and we will teach you how to be a top 1% level platform operator. And I think maybe at first I thought that was too much, where I would be like, well, no, that's teaching them business is enough, right? Just trying to add on top of that. But now I'm starting to see there's so much care that has to be put into being successful in platform that it literally translates into the business side. So what do you think about how that would go?
I think if you can learn the business side of it, you have the right mindset to learn the platform side of it. It coincides with each other, like we talked about. But it's not going to be for everyone. There's going to be a lot of people that they just maybe want to come in here and not go all the way with the oversized. Maybe they just want to do the legal flatbed or conestoga or whatever, and that's fine. I mean, we can do that also. But we've got a couple of different drivers here now that have gotten themselves in some of the higher profile platform stuff by sticking around. We've taught them quite a bit about it. They're doing pretty well for themselves, and both of them are looking to move up right now. So we're definitely excited and happy about that. So
well, and I'm not afraid to say that the platform truck saved this company. I mean, if we would have had to rely solely on van freight through all the turmoil of the transition, I don't think we would have made it. There was enough money, and that's the other side of it, mathematically speaking, that I got to see was, okay, well, maybe deadhead isn't that big of a deal when, you can deadhead further, but you get much more value. And it's also, I think, and I want Blake to speak on this because from a greater perspective of the market, to me, it seems like we could specialize in van. People do, right? They haul blankets and they do trade shows and all of the white glove type stuff. But in order to do that kind of stuff inside this program, there's not enough of it in the general market to where the driver could make enough money and to where we could make enough money. But with platform, it's much easier to specialize and work your way up through the ranks of the rating process, especially at Landstar. And the other thing, Landstar takes a lot of grief in the market, and a bunch of it's deserved. Okay, and I'm not going to pretend like it's not. That's all van. That's 100% van freight. All of the people that like to hate on Landstar, they completely ignore the platform side of this equation. and all of the oversize and the special, all the stuff that's done over there. It's not to say that somebody engaged in platform activities can't do something stupid, because they can. Okay. But I don't think you have the same kind of mess. So from your perspective, looking at the general market, if we were to decide to say, okay, we've got 5 trucks or 10 trucks or 15 trucks, and we're just going to do all platform, like, if you need to come in and run van for a few weeks, but we're not going to build the program around van anymore. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think the key word is general market, right? Before we get too many guys jumping us about that, there definitely is work for TARP stuff. There's a guy, is it Steve White, something, last name White or whatever. I know this dude carries
yeah.
He carries like 50
Scott
load
White.
bars.
Mm-hmm.
There you go. 50 load bars. All the guys
got a big house,
knocking it out.
Yeah,
he's killing it. But when you're trying to do that with a whole fleet, I think it's a lot easier to go out and find flatbed work, step deck, oversize, whatever. I think it's more obtainable on a week-to-week basis. Because that guy will hit several home runs, make great money, but then he's filling his rest of his time with rate like that. So yeah, you could specialize in it, but then you're also getting into some weird tax as well.
Mm-hmm.
Now, don't get me wrong, plenty of that in platform as well. But when you're padding stuff on a truck,
hey, pick your mic up just a touch.
Oh.
Just a touch. There you go.
Touch.
Yeah.
There we go. Is
Yeah.
that better?
Hope so.
How now, Brown? Okay. So, you start handling some things that you just can't trust everybody to touch.
Right.
Now, on a platform, okay, yeah, there's some of that too, but you're hooking chains to a lot of stuff, right? So it should be designed to kind of withstand a little bit of abuse. You're putting pads on stuff in the back of a dry van.
Mm-hmm.
You look at it cross-eyed and you're paying a claim. So that's always been tough for me.
Mm-hmm.
The white glove stuff to that level. But my question to Phil in doing platforms was, what is something that we can replicate over and over and over again, and it becomes a carbon copy of the one before it? We don't want to have to reinvent every person that comes through the door. We want a system that can be reproduced, multiplied, done again. That was just kind of my view of it. And the other part of it, you can make money in dry vans. So I don't want people to think we're sitting here saying, nah, it's a dead industry. But like I said this morning, I equate it to being on the stock exchange floor. Everybody wants that dry van freight, and everybody's fighting for it. It is the lowest common denominator. It is the easiest thing to get to.
Right.
So everybody's fighting over it. Well, let's move into a sector where the fights are a little less. There's less people involved, and let's specialize in something where we can be exemplary and we can rise above all that.
Yeah. And I think especially at Landstar, for whatever you want to think about it, is who a lot of customers are going to go to when it comes to platform, right? So, we put it back to you, Phil. You came in, 10, 12 years ago, and you, by accident, right, that, you kind of fell into it, and then you had the mentoring and stuff, and that's what got you a 1,000,000-mile safe driver. Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you. Yeah, it was, I've been at this nearly 15 years now, so I was a happy-go-lucky box jockey there for a long time, and one of my friends, mentors, drugged me screaming and yelling into this, and I still blame him for this mess, but nevertheless, it was the best thing that's ever happened to me as far as my driving career goes. I absolutely would not want to go back to doing the van stuff. I'm not going to say that I never would. I don't think you should ever use absolutes, but I would have to be hungry. I would have to be real hungry to do that.
Give them the numbers where you said you bought that truck 5 years ago.
Yes.
5 years ago, and it had
405,000 miles on it. Now we're close to 780,000 miles.
so 380,000 miles in
Yes.
4 years.
4 years, which is much less than what the average, your driver's going to run per year. I mean, most guys are going to run well over 100,000. So
Right.
I'm kind of just hanging out, sitting around a lot, And
Well,
that's not because I can't find freight to work. It's because I do what I want to do pretty much. Like,
right.
I keep using this term. I do what I want, which my wife absolutely hates that because I aggravate her with it all the time. But it's kind of the truth in some respects, But yeah, I mean, it's you don't have to run as hard to make the same amount of revenue that you would pulling a van. One of the other things that's I think is probably missed as far as the van versus platform thing is if you're not running as many miles, your maintenance costs shouldn't be as high, right?
Right. No,
So
that's true.
not only are you saving money with the fuel because you're not running the miles, but your maintenance cost is also
Well, we won't talk
less.
about your fuel mileage. We'll just leave
Yeah,
that.
it is what it is. It's not that great. I mean,
But I think that's kind of a great example. Is that when we're hauling van freight, we know from the word go that the margins are thin.
yes,
We have to be absolutely obsessed about fuel mileage because $5,000 or $10,000 a year could be the difference, in success or failure. You're doing the kind of revenue numbers which have probably. I mean, I looked at our top platform guy, but our top van, you've probably already doubled the revenue that our top van has done, and it's May 14th. And you haven't run anywhere near the amount of miles. So if your fuel mileage is 4 or 6 or 7, it really doesn't come into play as much for you because you're not trying to battle that bottom line as much as we are.
that's true. I mean, it doesn't come into play as much as it would with a van. However, it shouldn't be ignored even with the heavy haul stuff because
Right.
it's not only a measure of how much money you're making or saving in fuel mileage, but it's also a measure of what's my engine doing, what's the health of my truck. If that thing's doing 6 miles a gallon, all of a sudden it starts doing 5 miles a gallon, and you haven't changed anything, then you've got some kind of an issue, right?
Right.
So you should never ignore the fuel mileage, even with doing the heavy haul, even though it might not play into your revenue as much as it would do in the van. It should still never be ignored, in my opinion. And I still keep up with mine to this day. And it's not. It doesn't compare to the blue ribbon trucks. We're not going to say what it is.
Yeah.
It's not that pretty, but it's.
Dude, when you told me that your truck only had one fuel tank, I'm like, it does what? But then it made sense because when you're running under curfews and stuff, you got to stop every day anyway. So
the first thing I did when I bought that truck was I said, look, here's the thing. I'm going to put another fuel tank on the side. This box is gone. We're going to put another fuel tank on it. We'll be good to go. That was 5 years ago. I still have a box on the passenger side. I still have one fuel tank. And I realized a long time ago that for the most part, even as aggravating as it is on certain occasions, overall, it's not that big of a deal because we as truck drivers, you're out here on the road, you're eating pretty much whatever you can find at this point.
right.
The COVID got all the good restaurants. We all know that. So you're eating pretty much whatever you can find. So your health has to come into play at this at some point. I had an uncle that ruined his kidneys because he was a truck driver. He wouldn't stop when he needed to. So when I bought this truck, a couple months into it, I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna leave it like it is. This truck has to stop and get fuel. Chances are I'm going to need to stop too.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it still aggravates me. There are times when I'm like, you know what? I could probably put another fuel tank on it.
And so for the people that are watching and listening, give us the specs on the truck. What is it?
It's a 2015 International Pro Star with a 500 horsepower ISX Cummins. It has an 18-speed automatic.
The shame.
You can say what you want to about that automatic, but you're the guy that's wearing out your left foot in the traffic jam. So I hated it when I first got it. I get it. I totally get it. But, here we are 5 years into it. You know, if I could find another one exactly like it, I'd go buy it tomorrow. So you say what you want to about it.
I don't want to necessarily hijack conversation, but the one thing that keeps popping in my mind, because you talk about wearing out kidneys or wearing out your foot, wearing out this, that, and the other. There is, let's call it an epidemic of people who want to jump in the truck because they think, okay, truck driving's about point A to point B. I'm going to be behind this steering wheel. I'm going to bump this dock. I'm going to drive over here. I'm going to bump that dock. And that's the way I'm going to make my living, right? We talk about it all the time in the podcast of, people not pre-tripping, people not keeping up with their financials. There's all these things because literally they're point A to point B. It should be a given, but let's assume it's not. Walk us through the physical expectation of someone who's going to be out there slinging tarps and dragging chain.
Okay. Well, I mean, you have to be in some kind of, overall decent physical shape to do it. I mean, I'm nearly 44 years old. I'm 6'2", probably a little bit over on the heavy side. I'm 225 or something like that. I'm used to doing it.
I remember those days of being 225. That was a long time ago.
I think I was in middle school.
Yeah.
Well, you're like the giant.
Well, he's 6'5"
like
or whatever.
6'6".
There's very many
But,
people that I find that I ever have to look up to, and you're somewhat intriguing to me because I look down on most people, and I can't do that to you. So it's somewhat different. So
I'm glad I could do that for you.
Yeah, right.
But he's easy to find in a crowd, because you can see that head sticking up. Anyway,
That's
sorry.
true. Yeah. Anyway, all right. So I mean, yeah, you can't be. I mean, you have to be in some kind of physical condition to be able to do this. Obviously, and no matter what physical condition you're in, if you're the guy that goes to the gym every week and stuff, hey, look, you're going to be better off than most folks, right?
Mm-hmm.
But even if you do go to that gym, there's this thing called muscle memory. And, buddy, that will whoop you in a hurry. You get out there and you start throwing those tarps and chains and all that stuff. The first couple of times, you're going to hate yourself for the life decisions you've made.
And the people that got you into it.
And you're going to hate the people that got you into it. But I can assure you it takes about 2 to 3 weeks to get out of that, and you're good after that.
I only had about 7 months. And the very first load, because I had a guy that taught me into it at ATS.
Yeah.
Oh, this is great. It's awesome. You don't know what you're missing. The first load, I ran out of securement equipment, and I called him, and I'm like, dude, I've used every chain and every strap, and he's just laughing at me because, you've been there.
Oh, yeah.
But, yeah, it'll wear you out. But, and to go even to, connect it to, at least we would hope, you're getting out of the truck more on purpose to check your load and work on your load. So, hopefully, while you're out there, have a look at the tires.
Yep.
And the brakes and just scan your peepers around and actually look at the vehicle you're driving while you're out there.
Well, I would assume, and I'm not just assuming because I've heard you say before, so I'm cheating.
Okay.
But you build systems.
Yes.
Right. You build a system. Again, not to throw anybody under the bus, but I know you were coaching with somebody just recently,
right,
who was taking incredibly long to get his load secured, and your thing was, hey man, why are you running back to the front of the truck every time you need another chain, another strap? Why don't you figure out what you need ahead of time, plan it out in your head, and walk away from the front of the truck with everything?
We call them chain dragging monkeys because they ought to be dragging 3 or 4 when they go back there, right?
Well, that's true. I mean, yeah, if you can drag 3 or 4 of them, have at it. I'm not going to do it 2 at a time.
I'll tell you. Listen. I learned real quick. You're going to put that stuff back in an organized fashion. You won't do that for the first couple of weeks, and then you'll get somewhere, and there's just this mess and pile, and you don't know how it got there, and then all your binders have come unspooled, and I spent about 8 hours at that pilot in Sturbridge, Massachusetts. I just took a Saturday because it was all a complete disaster. And I'm like, okay, just take it all out and hang it up. And then when I get done, hang it up exactly the way I found it.
I can tell you exactly what length of chain you're going to get. If you went to my headache rack right now and you pointed to one of them and said, what length is this? I can tell you exactly what length it is.
Yeah.
They've been there for years. Like, it's been organized that way for a long time. And you learn ways over a period of time of doing this. You learn ways to make it easier on you, whether it be, you store the things that you need the most in the most accessible position you can get, or, whatever it may be that you can do to help yourself to save time at a receiver or a shipper, either one.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you have to do in order to be the most efficient that you can at doing this. The same thing with the tarps or whatever, if when you first start doing this, you're going to be slow, you're going to be cumbersome, you're going to make mistakes, you're going to walk over yourself, you're going to be that guy we were talking about that goes back and forth and makes too many trips to get more securement or whatever. But when you can go up to that load and you can look at that load as a whole and you can say, this is what I need to secure this load, and you go to, your headache rack or your storage box or whatever it may be, and you pull out exactly what you need and you go to work, that's going to be what makes you more efficient as a driver. And at the end of the month, you're going to put more money in your pocket, because that might be the difference between getting an extra load and not getting an extra load.
Or shredding all your tarps on one load.
Or shredding all your tarps on one load.
Ask me how I know.
Yeah, you can do that too. So yeah.
Well, and a little bit of a shameless plug, we'll do this a few times along the podcast. But like you said, you just made a comment. You learn over time.
Yes.
Right. Or you can come under some mentorship where you can sit and watch how they go through something step by step and go, hey, man, you messed up on step 2, step 5, step 6. Because, again, to tell a story on myself, one of my local guys who does not run for Landstar, so he did not go to a securement class. He got caught in a situation where we'd just been strapping things, right? Well, he got somewhere where it was just supposed to be strapped, and all of a sudden they were like, well, no, you're going to have to chain. He didn't even bring chains with it.
Mm.
He didn't know what to do.
That's a bad day.
So he calls me, and I was like, hey, man, don't worry. I got you, boo. I know exactly what to do. And so I said, you just stay right where you're at. Hung up the phone. I was like, oh, God, Phil, you got to help me. This boy's stranded over there. He's got $1 million worth of freight on the back of this thing, and he don't have a clue what to do. And guess who else don't know what to do either? He said, all right, go get this, 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 and this. And he walked to me, somebody who has rarely, other than when I'm loading in the back of one, has been within 10 feet of a truck. He walked me through it step by step. He checked my work. He saw what we did. And me, a novice who had never held a binder in my hand before, he walked me from beginning to end, and I think I'd have got a sign off in most places on what we did there. And I did it in 30 minutes.
Yeah.
It was done. So having that type of mentorship, again, running my fleets, I call Chris on a daily basis and go, hey, man, we're having this mechanical issue. We're having this. I got caught in that issue. I called you. I've got other drivers that I call in the fleet that have done things and say, hey, what would you do in this situation? I just like to pick your brain. And, the wealth of knowledge that you have to pick from here. Now, man, their heads are swelling, folks. You can't see it on the camera.
There's more on one side of the table than there is on the other, but that's okay.
It is what it is. Hey, and they call me just when.
Well, one of the things that you struggle with, if A, you want to have a fleet, right? You want to have more than one truck. What do you have to have if you have trucks? You have to have drivers, okay? Right. Well, if you want to have a training fleet, you have to have drivers, but those drivers have to be coachable. Those drivers have to be invested in learning, because you can't come here for the money. You can't, because I wanted that at first, because in my mind, I'm like, okay, work equals money. The harder and the more efficient that I work, the more money that I make. And I was great for Blue Ribbon in the beginning, but I came in already knowing how to do a lot of stuff. And I made a bunch of money. Well, then people would come in and I'd burn them up. Like I would be like, well, I don't know what's wrong with you, but I can do this. If I can do this, certainly you can do it. And that's not true. They cannot operate at the same level that I can, but my motivation is not to kill them. It's to make them as much money as possible because I want them, and you know, especially when the market was hot, man, I want you getting that 2,000 a week, at 2,500 a week. And so I would just pour loads on them. And then the one guy worked here a week and he was like, I've lost 15 pounds and I haven't slept and I'm done. And I'm like, and it still didn't click in for me. And Larry was finally like, listen, brother, you cannot set people on fire. Okay. You just can't do it. So I had to lower my expectations. So I'm kind of hopeful that if we brought this platform aspect into it, that, and because I've seen it, you know, we've got a new guy that's been here, maybe 2 months, and he's super slow, and that's okay. But the market has been such that we have been able to put really good loads on him that have made up the difference. Now, we have shoved the golden horseshoe in a couple uncomfortable places a time or two, you know, motivation to, hey, buddy, let's go. But if he would have been driving a van,
he would have been broke.
He'd have been making $300 a week. I mean, you know, and that's the hard part. You know, when I make a TikTok video and somebody watches the first 15 seconds before their thumbs start twitching, well, what are you paying? What are you paying? What are you paying?
Yeah.
Honey, it doesn't matter because you're paid on production. If you want to be an owner-operator, you're going to get paid on what you do, period, end of story. And that's the way it's going to be here. So, you know, my ideal candidate is a man or woman, young, single, you know, 23 to 30. That's the perfect, because you can pour so much into it. You know, the more kids you have and the more wives you have, it's tough. You know, I did all of this with kids between like 0 and 12, you know, and it's hard. It adds another level of difficulty because your family's important. But when you're in business, and that's the one thing everybody in this room knows, that business sometimes is going to demand that you miss something.
Right.
And there's almost no apology for that. It's, well, there's something has happened that's out of my control, and I have to go right now. And I had to do that so many times with little kids and an angry wife, but, you know, that happens. We're obviously, as a business, we have to be concerned about the health of the business, and the business has to make a profit, right? There's no getting around it. And that's the difference, the thing that Blake has helped me see, because we always ran Blue Ribbon as, you know, somewhere between 7 and 15 individual trucks. But in reality, we have to run it as a fleet that has a side mission of helping people through this program. And so it's not just one thing. It's, could the drivers have a better experience? Could we be more profitable? Does it give the driver even more value when they get done with the 18 months, that not only have they been given all of the business basics and they know how to do that, but now they also are an FB2 or an FB3 that can haul oversized loads. I mean, that to me may be why that we just go full bore and say, okay, everybody's platform, you know. We got one guy we're probably going to have to grandfather in, but he'll be the one lone door swinger.
That's fine. He's look, if there was ever a good door swinger,
he can make it.
Yeah,
he can make it. And as much as I've aggravated him since the time that he came to Blue Ribbon, I've been on him about, because after I figured out what he was about and his personality, I've been on him for a long time to come to platform. And he's, you know, I used to have 2 holdouts. One of them was Richie, and the other was this guy. Now I only have one. So
I do have something real quick I want to share because I saw this pop up. My email lights up 24 hours a day. But we have a BCO mentoring client, Tyrone, who's probably been with us a year or maybe more. And I don't know, about a week or so ago, I woke up to a text message from an agent, Landstar agent, that said, "Red alert, I need all the trucks you can send me," because he works with a company that had bought Big Lots and was reopening the Big Lots stores. And he said, "Send them all." Well, of course, he comes to us because he knows that we are more than likely going to have people that are service oriented.
Right.
Well, Tyrone has done one of his loads, and I'm looking through, and it's a long thread here of all the emails that have transpired between Tyrone and the agency, and it ends with an email from the agency owner. "I like this driver. Move him to the top of the list." Folks, that's how it's done.
Yes, sir.
Right? And it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There's probably 10 or 12 emails that went back and forth between this BCO and this agent that has forever cemented that relationship to where that agency owner will move hell and earth to make sure that this guy's taken care of. Now, the same agency owner called and lit my ass up a couple of mornings ago because one of my drivers stepped on it, but who has also done an amazing job recovering and redeeming himself for his poor communication. But that's the same agent who's coming to me on the one hand say, "I need more of him," and on the other hand saying, "What the hell's wrong with this guy?"
Right.
Well, there were some extenuating circumstances.
There was extenuating circumstances.
It doesn't make it right, but
Right.
he was what. If I may, in this particular element, this is something we probably don't talk about enough. That there's 1,000 ways to skin this cat. So don't ever listen to what we're saying and think that we backed you into a corner, that this is the only way you can. Because if we back up 3 drivers ago that we were talking about, if I could recreate a fleet of him, it wouldn't matter what we carried. We could find a way to make money at it, right?
Right.
So him being a door swinger is not an impediment to us moving forward.
Right.
And so for that particular guy, would I love to get him over on your side of things and go make some killer cash?
No idea.
Yes,
Oh,
I
listen,
absolutely would.
He could make so much money.
But me being who I am, I respect that he makes the decision to say, "Hey, being with my family means something to me. So if I go on a platform, getting back around to where I need to be as often as I want to be there is a little difficult." And he's made that ultimate decision, which again, there's sacrifices on both ends, right? But he still puts up good numbers every week.
No, the best.
I mean, they're competitive.
Yeah.
Him and I have had several conversations about this, and when after he was here for a few months and I realized what he was about, I came to him, and I was like, "Hey, you should come to the platform and play with the big dogs, cool people or whatever, right?" And him and I had some legitimate, serious conversations. Believe it or not, I can actually do that. But one of them that we had was, he asked me. He said, "Can you get me home every week?" I said, "I cannot guarantee that." I said, "There's a lot. If you look at the Landstar board, there's a lot more van loads than our platform loads,
Right.
and that goes for any type of platform trailer. There's always going to be more van loads. It's always been that way. So I cannot guarantee that I can get you home every week." I said, "Okay, I'm out." Okay.
Right.
So every once in a while, when we talk for some reason or whatever, I'll bring it up. Tell him, "Hey, I'm over here," but I know he's not going to, but it's fine. He's the one guy. He's the one that got away. He's my one that got away. But that's fine. I'm okay with that because we've had a lot of good people come through this program, and a lot of people that's excelled at it. And there's we've got Greg now. He's an FP4. We got Evan. I think Evan's a 3 now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We've got a couple more coming up. So we got a team that's BCO or they're mentoring clients. They're showing a lot of promise, and I think they're going to go far and do great things themselves. you know, and a couple other, you know, or up and coming drivers or whatever, we can, you know, we can still get them up there too. So I mean, everybody don't move as fast. That's fine. Just because you know you don't move at the same pace as everybody else, don't mean that I can't take you from being a van driver making a little bit of money to a guy that's over here making a lot of money. So, and there's the other thing that's, you know, that we don't talk about a whole lot is, you know, with the van stuff, you're, you know, run, run, run. We're over here stacking loads, you know, running as wide open as you can.
Right.
Over here, platform, that's not how that works. Like, you
That's
can't,
100% true.
you cannot, this is one of the things, this is one of the most hilarious things that it's ever happened, Blue Ribbon. Is like when I first started dispatching fire, Larry come to me, he's like, hey, he's like, why aren't we stacking loads? I'm like, because you can't. He's like, what? You can't stack loads. You can't do that with this. There's too many variables involved in it as far as loading times and unloading times and all this. I can't book 3 or 4 loads out and expect the driver to be able to make every one of them, because 9 times out of 10, yeah, he might make, you know, the second load. He might even make the third load, but that fourth load, probably there's the
One crane appointment or
Yeah.
something. Yeah.
it's not going to happen. So with that being said, you're not running like, you know, wide open all the time. You've got the time. Don't get me wrong. You're not just sitting in a truck stop looking at your phone, Facebook all day. You're actually working, but you don't have the amount of pressure on you that you do when you're doing vans. And I think that's what a lot of guys gravitate to is you release that amount of pressure that you have to run all these miles for, you know, less rate per mile or whatever than if you were just over here with doing the platform stuff and you're running, you know, 2/3 of the miles. I don't know what the number is, but
Well, our top platform guy I looked up earlier has run 45,000 miles this year,
yeah,
and you've driven 20, 22.
yeah. So
Well, and that was one of the things that I experienced back in the day was I realized there's a massive, massive cultural difference
yes,
between pulling vans and pulling flatbeds, because the number of times that people just walked up and didn't even ask. They started helping me fold up my tarps and help me do stuff. And, you know, I mean, you could literally be on fire and the van driver's like, I wonder if I should put him out, you know.
yeah,
But platform, like the culture is different there, probably because there's a mutual appreciation of the amount of work that goes into it. And so, you know, if you see somebody struggling with big tarps and it's wind, you just walk over and help them, right? It's a completely different world. And then when you're talking about the business relationships, I've noticed, you know, as I'm putting in the spreadsheet, you know, the vans, you know, there may be 50 different agency codes that I'll see throughout a week. With platform, it's usually the same 3, 4, 5, 10, you know. That, you know, that like when I see the code, I'm like, well, I already know the phone number, right? Because we've done it so many times and we know who's moving what and where, and we can make a more informed decision about the load that we're taking now because we know it's going, oh, we'll go over there and they've got this and that and the other. And so I don't know. To me, it seems just so blatantly obvious that the master class should be giving you more than just the business training. Because, you know, if somebody came in and got through it at the end, well, yeah, they can haul van freight and they can do it really well and they can do it efficiently and they can do it profitably. But they're in that giant sea that you're talking about of just, well, everybody's doing that. You know, if we can add that component to this program, and you graduate from here in 18 months, and you're an FB3 that can haul, what's FB3? Is that 12 wide, 10 wide?
10 wide.
You can haul 10 wide loads.
Actually, let's see. Yeah, I think it's
The
no,
wheels
it
are
would be
carrying
12 wide.
Yeah,
Up to 12 wide.
up to 12 wide.
Yeah.
I mean, that's, you know, and so just the opportunity for both the driver to make money while they're here and for us to make a pretty handsome profit. You know, we'll cash those checks. I ain't scared, you know. But my motivation always has been, since the idea of really making this company about training, was I want the person to be able to buy their first truck, be insulated from a lot of the self-inflicted, dangerous decisions that lead to ruin in the first 90 days. I want them to be insulated from that, and this would give them an extra layer of value in the market that is like, wow, okay, well, not only do I know how to efficiently and profitably run my business, but I'm also going to have access to unbelievable levels of freight revenue,
Yeah.
So it's kind of a no-brainer.
And it leaves you, I think if you plan an exit going in, which a lot of business people will tell you that, know how you're going to get out before you get in. I've never been that type. I'm whole hog, baby. We're going to do this or die,
Right.
But if you're doing heavy haul, you're doing tarped freight, you're doing all this kind of stuff, just to say something happens, maybe with your health a little bit, and maybe you can't keep up anymore. Well, maybe you do back down to a dry van for a little bit if you still need to make that living, whatever.
Mhm.
And I've known people that's done that before too,
Yeah,
and they're right back in the heavy haul now.
It gives you somewhere to go where if you're just doing dry van and all of a sudden you realize, hey, we got more drivers than we got freight, what do I do now? Well, there's no backup plan. There's nowhere to go, Or like you said, if you're sitting under a flatbed, but all of a sudden you hit on some great deal where they're like, hey, we want to tie you up for 3 weeks because we like you as a driver. We want you to pull this dry van.
That agent I was talking about earlier before, I got a text today. He's like, I'll take your platform, guys. This is power only.
No, you can't have no.
Well, and that's what I said. Me, first of all, and Chris is like, it's not that good. I said, oh, okay, again, this has all been about, from day one, learning from my mistakes. I was the quintessential example of a person that recognized the value in being an owner-operator, recognized the value in self-employment. Didn't really have anybody to teach me and train me. I learned most of what I learned the hard way, which is not the best way to learn. And then I failed, and I made it a whole lot longer than most. Most fail in the first 2 years. It took me a little more than 3. But we want to give you the habits. And back to that example of the driver that made the agent angry. When I talked to him, he said, well, I talked to him on the phone. I said, yeah, but there's nothing in the email. And brother, if it ain't wrote down, it didn't happen.
Yep.
And so he learned the hardest of ways. Okay, yeah, you can tell the agent, here's what I'm going to do. And then per our discussion
Yes.
on the phone, I'm going to do this, that, and the other. And now it's locked into the record forever. And when you get the other guy that's not in the email chain that's, blowing his head off, and go, oh, hey, look at this email. I talked to your person. Now it's no longer your fault. It's the person's fault that didn't tell the guy that needed to know the thing, but you got no proof, right?
Well, I couldn't tell you how many times I've typed those 3 words per conversation.
Oh, yeah. Because it's just setting the record.
Yes.
And we're able to throw out numbers all the time about, we're sitting here talking about something, and, Blake asked something. I'm like, fuel cost was 47 cents a mile last year, right? But all of that becomes from daily, sometimes hourly. When you get a new piece of information in your hand, goes in the spreadsheet. When you get a receipt in your hand, gets scanned immediately, right? You cannot ignore those things, and they have to become that habit that's unbreakable and just has to be muscle memory, like you're talking about. You just have to do it. And that way, you've laid all of the crumbs, and if you've ever got to go chasing something, okay, well, there it is. Let me just follow these crumbs of information right back to the source, and I can compile all that data and know exactly exactly what happened and when it happened and where it happened. So blueribbonlogistics.com, go to the website, read about the master class. And there's a spot there you can fill out a form. And when you get done with that form, it will show you a link where you can
Schedule a Zoom
thank
meeting.
you. You can schedule a Zoom meeting. Keyword Zoom, y'all. It's on Zoom. It's not a phone call. We're not meeting in person. We're going to have a Zoom call. And I would prefer, I've said this before, I'll say it one more time. I would prefer if you schedule an appointment on my website, it would be awesome if you show up at the time you scheduled it. Just saying. Because I'm going to be there. And if you're not, don't be surprised if I'm a little salty. Because being on time in the trucking industry is kind of a big deal,
And I think this is time for our weekly disclaimer. Like, if you're just looking for the revenue, if that's what you're after, because a lot of what we're talking about is revenue, right? We're talking about whatever. This ain't for you, because you're going to be sorely disappointed. Not because you're not making money. You're going to make money. But I promise you, we're going to be on you like white on rice.
True.
This isn't like other company jobs where, you go out and you do your thing and you never talk to anybody. This is a training program. Therefore, you have people to answer to. You have a standard to live up to. And that standard is going to be one set by people who have been in the business for many, many, many years. So don't think you're just going to come in, skate into some special load board that we have access to that nobody else does. And that's why you're coming. Unfortunately, as I've watched back through some of the old interviews and stuff, I feel like that's what people think. They think, oh, well, these guys talk about all the freight they get. Yeah, we get it. But we get it because of our reputation and the standard we set in front of it. Not because of some special board or whatever.
Yeah,
So,
the rate per mile and the rate per day and the rate per week, with all that stuff is very important because it gives us a goal. But we're obsessed with cost per mile. We're obsessed with, and I haven't talked about this here. I've got a few more minutes, but if you go to the TikTok page, you'll get to see the adventure I've been on for the last, about 72 hours. I had to fly to Jacksonville. We had let a driver go. I think Blake mentioned this before. We let a driver go, and the next day Landstar let one go, and about 2 days later, one failed a DOT physical. So we went down 3 drivers in about 3 days, right? Well, I've got a CDL and a medical card, so it's time for Daddy to go haul some freight.
Yeah.
So I fly to Jacksonville. Not a big fan of airplanes, by the way. But I get down there, and the truck's in terrible shape, right? And it's a failure of both the shop industry that's supposed to be inspecting the trucks and informing me when there's a problem, and it's a failure of the person behind the wheel, right? Because I don't have ESP, right? I can't read your mind. I'm not telekinetic. If you don't tell me that your tires are shaking, well, I'm not going to know about it, and I'm not going to fix it, right? And so Monday, I spent about 8 hours with Rocky, replacing steering components and shocks and all this stuff. And then, of course, I don't know that the air conditioner's broke. Found that out. That was awesome. 730 miles in about 24 hours with no air conditioner. So I'm a little hot and bothered over the last few days. So now, we're having to get this truck together, but it's like we have to figure out how to connect like synapses and stuff in the brain to get you to understand that if you're going to be an owner-operator, you must, and you don't have a choice, but to study and learn about the systems of the vehicle. You may not ever be able to fix it yourself, right? But you have to understand it, right? You have to have enough basic understanding, and nobody's going to give you that. I mean, we'll give it to you little by little because as we go through, you're going to see things. And you can choose to retain that, or you could ignore it like it never happened. But you have to be in tune with your vehicle and then raise your hand and say, hey, my tires are shaking, or this is broke, or that's broke. but you're the only person on the planet that you can really trust. You can't trust the shop industry. You can't trust anybody but you to be the person that is in charge. And so y'all, the number of times that I've gone into a shop and told them to do something and they say, well, we're going to do this. No, you're not. Who's paying the bill? You are. Guess who's in charge? I'm the boss. So you're going to do what I tell you to do, exactly how I tell you to do it, or you're not going to do it, and I'll take it somewhere else.
Or things you asked them to do, but they obviously didn't, like the grease fitting.
Right. Yeah. I mean, Rocky probably put 2 full tubes of grease into the kingpins on this truck. Y'all, we do a chassis lube every 12,500 miles. Ain't been touched. Has not been touched. Rocky had to take a wire brush to clean off the tops of the kingpin caps. There's no possible way that truck has gotten any grease because the grease fitting won't fit onto the grease zerk, you know? And I know, I told him to do a chassis lube. Okay, well, you better go check it or go buy a grease gun, do it yourself. That's probably the way. Because nobody cares, and they're not going to care, so you have to care, which brings it all full circle right back to the first 2 minutes, is in platform, you got a bunch of weight on that deck, and if it comes off, it's a disaster.
That's right.
Well, we have got a very, very exciting episode for y'all next. We're going to sit at this table and we're going to fight about old trucks versus new trucks, and I'm going to win, okay? So I just want to prepare y'all for that. That'll be next week's episode. So keep up on the TikToks. Now, I've had this plan to do TikTok lives 3 times a week, but I couldn't do one at 70 mile an hour with the windows down last night. So hopefully we expect to do that. And we're still considering doing one YouTube live a month. Anything else we need to add before we close this one out?
No. Well, yes. Jump in the comments. Talk to us. We are going back and reading the comments. So get in there, talk. Say what you want to say. You don't agree with what we're talking about. You don't think Phil's as good a guy as we do. Get in there and say so. I'd love to hear what you got to say about it. We want to hear from you guys. This is a community. This is something that we value. So don't just watch the video. Say something. It'd be cool.
Agreed. All right. Well, we will see everybody next time.